있어요.
Hi, I'm Jeremy's mom, Sue. My husband, JL. I'll just tell you a little bit about Jeremy's life. Jeremy had a fulfilling life. I'll start with all his sports he did. He did a lot. At 3 years old, I put him in swimming lessons, which he completed every level because we lived up in Washington where there's lots of water and everything. So he complained he wanted to quit. But I kept him until he was a really good swimmer. Then he started playing t-ball, coach pitch, and regular baseball. He was on a couple of basketball teams. And then Jeremy started playing tennis, which led him to be on the high school tennis team and in a lot of tennis competitions. He also knew how to water ski, wakeboard, snowboard, ice skate, rollerblade, skateboard. Yeah, then he would dig up our garden and made jumps in our back garden so he could do some BMX bike riding, which at one point he chipped a bone in his shoulder and I think he broke his wrist from falling from BMX riding. He was very, very musical. We bought him a drum set at 8 years old, and he proceeded to be in many talent shows, and he played for the Live Theater in our little town. And he also played with some bands at our Roy Steakhouse, and he played for band in junior high, high school, and even in college. Jeremy taught himself to play piano, and he played absolutely beautifully by ear. I used to love it when he'd play the theme to Jurassic Park and just did it. And even though he could read music, he just sat and just played. It was beautiful. He also played around on the guitar and could pick up songs on that. And recently, in the past year or so, he decided he wanted to learn violin and leased a violin and just tried to learn to play the violin. So with sports and music in his life, he lettered all 4 years in high school in tennis and jazz band and marching band. And then in his spare time, throughout all the stuff he's doing, he flew huge radio-controlled airplanes, which led him to taking real flying lessons, and he eventually got his pilot's license. And I'm just glad I didn't know the day that he went solo, because I wouldn't have made it through that day. In the spring of 2011, he joined the Air National Guard and really loved that because then he was around good people and airplanes. He was still also continuing his college classes because he eventually wanted to get like his engineering degree and he wanted to be a pilot, maybe a commercial pilot. He wanted to be flying, or at least working with the airplanes. He had so many goals ahead of him. We have pages and pages of a notebook with goals he had. He just had a ton of goals, and he wanted to reach all of them. Well, recently, Jeremy and Chantal came up to Washington the week of July 4th, and it was pretty much like they were saying their goodbyes without any of us knowing. Chantal and Jessica sang with the worship group at our church up in Washington, while Jeremy played the drums. So they were all up there during one of the services while they were there. And then Jeremy and Chantal and Jessica and her husband Wade did a day trip down to Oregon to see my dad, who is their grandpa, who he hadn't seen in years and years. And then he had a couple hours with a good friend of his, Corey, and his wife, Lori. They spent a couple hours with them. And then they also met with some other good friends, Becky and Gigi, and some of their kids that my kids grew up with when we used to live in Everett, Washington. And they went up to Seattle and spent a day with all of them, who he had not seen for a while because Jeremy moved to Arizona 2 years ago. So then they came on our boat for a going away party for Jessica's husband Wade, who was leaving for South Korea with the Air Force, and now it kind of seems like it was Jeremy and Chantal's going away party. We had close family on the boat, and we had such a good time, and they just loved it, and it was a really, really good day. So he really did lead a very, very good life. And he got to experience falling in love because he just kept calling me and telling me how much he loved Chantal. And I remember the first time he called me, he says, "Mom, I met the girl that I want to spend the rest of my life with." So I love Jeremy so much, and I miss him.